You're all welcome to today's Deep News Analysis. This is where we break things down in a simple and real way Nigerians can understand. If you care about what is happening in this country and how it affects you, make sure you hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Because what we're about to discuss today is serious. Everything started with a strong message coming from the United States Senate. There were talks, warnings, even pressure. The message was clear: concerns about Sharia law in Nigeria, especially in the northern states. And then, something even more serious was mentioned: the idea of possible consequences if nothing changes. Some people even interpreted it as a threat to divide Nigeria. Now pause. This is not small talk. This is a major political signal. This is a powerful foreign institution discussing how part of Nigeria operates its legal and religious structure. When such a message comes from a body like the United States Senate, it carries weight. It is not a random opinion from social media. It is not a small group making noise. It represents one of the most influential political systems in the world. That is why Nigerians reacted immediately. Many began to ask, why is this coming up now? What triggered this concern? Is this about human rights? Is it about global pressure? Or is it about politics beyond what we are being told? The issue of Sharia law in northern Nigeria is not new. It has existed for years under Nigeria's constitutional framework, where states have certain powers to apply Islamic law in personal and criminal matters for Muslims who choose it. This has always been a sensitive topic because Nigeria is a multi-religious and multi-ethnic country. So when the United States Senate raised concerns and reportedly hinted at serious consequences if Sharia law is not abolished, it struck a nerve. To some Nigerians, it felt like interference. To others, it felt like international concern over rights and legal standards. But regardless of where people stand, one fact is clear: when a foreign government body speaks strongly about internal policies, it automatically becomes a national issue. Political observers began to analyze the language used. Was it a warning? Was it diplomatic pressure? Was it part of a broader foreign policy strategy? These questions started spreading across political discussions, television debates, and online platforms. At the same time, ordinary Nigerians were trying to understand what this means for the country's unity. Nigeria has always balanced different legal and cultural systems under one federal structure. That balance is delicate. Any external pressure touching religion can quickly become emotional. Religion in Nigeria is not just a private matter. It is deeply connected to identity, culture, and community leadership. That is why this development moved from being an international comment to becoming a national conversation within hours. The federal government was placed in a sensitive position. On one side, Nigeria maintains diplomatic relations with the United States. On the other side, it must protect its sovereignty and internal constitutional arrangements. And then there is the northern region itself. For many Muslims in the north, Sharia is not viewed as a political tool. It is seen as a religious obligation and a moral guide. So when the discussion shifts toward abolishing it, many see that as an attack on their faith rather than just a legal reform. This is where tension begins to build. Because once religion enters the conversation, emotions rise quickly. What may appear as policy discussion in Washington can be interpreted as religious pressure in Kanu, Sokoto, or Zamfara. That difference in perception matters. As reactions continued to grow, attention turned toward key religious bodies in Nigeria. People began asking, who will respond officially? Who will defend the position of Muslims in the north? That is when focus shifted toward the Supreme Council for Sharia in Nigeria. This council is one of the strongest voices when it comes to the defense and interpretation of Sharia within Nigeria. It represents scholars and leaders who see Sharia not just as state policy, but as religious duty. So while the message from the United States Senate triggered the controversy, many Nigerians understood that the real internal response would likely come from this council. And at that point, the situation moved from being an international statement to becoming a serious national debate. The response did not take long to arrive. The Supreme Council for Sharia in Nigeria came forward with a clear and direct position. There was no confusion in their message, and there was no attempt to soften their tone. They made it known that no external authority has the power to force Muslims in Nigeria to abandon Sharia. That statement immediately changed the direction of the conversation. What started as an international concern quickly became a strong national response. It was no longer just about what was said outside Nigeria. It became about how Nigeria chooses to defend its internal structure and religious identity. The Council stressed that Sharia is not a political experiment that can be adjusted based on foreign opinion. According to them, it is part of the religious life of Muslims and remains protected under Nigeria's constitutional framework. They pointed out that Nigeria operates as a sovereign nation with its own laws and systems. Within that structure, different states have the legal right to apply Sharia in matters concerning Muslims who accept it. This, they argued, is not a violation of national unity but an expression of Nigeria's diversity. The tone of the response also reflected something deeper. It showed resistance to external pressure. The Council did not frame the issue as a negotiation. Instead, they treated it as a line that cannot be crossed. This approach sent a strong signal, not just to the international community, but also to Nigerians watching closely. Religious leaders and scholars in the north began to align with this position. Many supported the Council's stance, saying that any attempt to remove Sharia would be seen as an attack on their faith. At the same time, political analysts began to examine the wider implications. They noted that this response places the Nigerian government in a delicate position. The government must manage its relationship with the United States while also respecting the strong views coming from within its borders. This balance is not easy. On one side, Nigeria is part of the global community and engages with international partners on issues like security, trade, and governance. On the other side, it must protect its independence and ensure that internal decisions are not controlled by outside voices. The reaction from the Council also raised questions about how far external influence should go. Some Nigerians believe that international bodies have a role in raising concerns, especially when it comes to human rights. Others strongly reject any form of foreign involvement in matters of religion. This difference in opinion has started to shape public discussion across the country. However, the Council remained focused on its core message. They emphasized that Sharia is voluntary for Muslims and does not apply to non-Muslims. They argued that this already creates a balance within Nigeria's legal system. From their perspective, there is no justification for external interference when the system allows freedom of choice within religious practice. They also warned that pushing too hard on this issue could create unnecessary tension. According to their position, any attempt to force change from outside could lead to resistance, not reform. This is an important point. Because history has shown that when sensitive issues like religion are handled with pressure instead of dialogue, the result is often conflict rather than understanding. The Council's response, therefore, was not just a defense of Sharia. It was also a warning about the possible consequences of external pressure. As this position spread across media platforms, it became clear that the issue had entered a new phase. It was no longer just about statements or reactions. It became a test of Nigeria's ability to manage internal diversity while responding to global attention. The firm stance taken by the Supreme Council for Sharia in Nigeria has now set the tone for what comes next. It has drawn a clear line, and it has made one message very clear to both Nigerians and the international community. On matters of faith and religious law, the final decision will come from within Nigeria, not from outside. The conversation is now shifting toward what practical steps may follow. Government officials are expected to respond carefully, knowing that any statement can either calm the situation or increase tension. At the same time, international observers are watching closely to see how Nigeria handles this moment. Within the country, discussions are becoming more serious. Legal experts, religious leaders, and policy analysts are all weighing in, trying to find a path that protects both national unity and religious freedom. The key issue now is control. Who defines the limits of Nigeria's legal system? Who decides how religion fits into governance? For many Nigerians, this is no longer just about Sharia. It is about independence and respect. And as this debate continues, one thing remains certain: the decisions made now will shape not just today's headlines, but Nigeria's future stability. This situation has now moved beyond statements and reactions. It has entered a stage where the real meaning must be understood. Because at the surface, It looks like a disagreement over Sharia law. But underneath, it is about something much bigger: national authority, identity, and control over internal affairs. Nigeria is not a small or simple country. It is made up of many groups, many beliefs, and many systems that have learned to exist together under one constitution. That balance has always required careful handling. Now, that balance is being tested again. When an external body like the United States Senate raises strong concerns, it introduces international pressure into a very sensitive local issue. And once that happens, the focus shifts from internal discussion to global attention. That is where things become more complex. Because Nigeria must now respond in a way that protects its sovereignty while also maintaining its international relationships. This is not just about saying yes or no. It is about strategy. If the response is too soft, it may appear as weakness or acceptance of external influence. If it is too strong, it may affect diplomatic ties and create tension beyond Nigeria's borders. So the government is walking a very tight line. At the same time, the internal impact cannot be ignored. Nigeria's strength has always come from its ability to manage diversity. Different regions operate in slightly different ways, yet they remain under one national identity. Sharia law in the north is one example of that arrangement. For many Muslims, it represents moral structure and religious commitment. For others, especially outside the region, it raises concerns about fairness and equality. This difference in perception has always existed, but it has been managed over time. Now, with external attention added to the situation, those differences are becoming more visible. Public opinion is beginning to divide along familiar lines. Some Nigerians are saying the country must resist any foreign interference completely. They believe that allowing outside voices to influence internal matters sets a dangerous precedent. Others are saying that global standards and human rights concerns should not be ignored, even if they come from outside. This is where the real tension lies. Because both sides believe they are defending what is right. And when both sides feel justified, compromise becomes difficult. Another important factor is how this situation affects national unity. Nigeria has faced many challenges in the past: political disagreements, regional tensions, and economic struggles. Through all of this, unity has remained a key goal, even when it is not perfect. But issues that involve religion can quickly become more sensitive than politics or economics. Religion connects deeply to identity, and once people feel that their identity is under threat, reactions become stronger and more emotional. That is why this moment must be handled with extreme care. Leaders at all levels must understand that their words and actions carry weight. A single statement can either calm the situation or create more division. There is also the question of long-term impact. What happens next will not end with this current debate. It will shape how Nigeria deals with similar issues in the future. It will define how much influence external bodies can have on internal matters. And it will test how strong Nigeria's institutions are when faced with pressure. The role of the Supreme Council for Sharia in Nigeria also becomes very important at this stage. Their position has already made it clear that there are limits to what can be accepted. They have drawn a line based on religious belief and constitutional understanding. But beyond that, their influence will affect how millions of people respond moving forward. If their message encourages calm and structured dialogue, it can help stabilize the situation. If it leads to stronger resistance without engagement, it may increase tension. This is why leadership matters now more than ever. Not just political leadership, but religious and community leadership as well. Every voice that speaks on this issue is shaping the direction Nigeria will take. And while the global spotlight remains on the country, Nigerians themselves are the ones who will decide the outcome. Because in the end, no external pressure can define Nigeria's future if the country remains united in its decisions. That is the real test. Not just how Nigeria responds to the world, but how Nigeria manages itself. At this point, silence is no longer an option for key stakeholders. The federal government must speak with clarity, not confusion. Nigerians expect direction, not mixed signals. A clear position will help reduce speculation and prevent the spread of fear across different regions. At the same time, dialogue must remain open. This is not a moment for rushed decisions. It is a moment for careful thinking, strong leadership, and respect for the country's complexity. Every group involved must feel heard, even when there is disagreement. There is also a need for public awareness. Many Nigerians are reacting based on emotion, not full understanding. Clear information will help people see the issue beyond headlines and social media pressure. In all of this, one thing must remain the priority: peace. No matter the position, no matter the argument, Nigeria cannot afford division at this level. Because once tension grows beyond control, the cost is too high. And at that point, nobody truly wins. The situation now calls for wisdom from every side. Leaders, religious bodies, and citizens all have a role to play in keeping the country united. The Supreme Council for Sharia in Nigeria remains a central voice, reminding everyone that Sharia is part of life for millions, and external pressure cannot change that. At the same time, the Council's stance shows that Nigeria's sovereignty is non-negotiable. How the country navigates this moment will define not just religious freedom, but the strength of Nigeria's unity. The decisions made today will be remembered for years, shaping the future for generations to come.